All right. Howdy, howdy. Here we are. Hey, Paige Engle. How are you?
I am good, Melissa. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. I want to start and just say thank you so much for jumping on with me today. I know whatever we talk about is going to just really transform and help so many people and so many women that are listening. So I do want to thank you before we get started.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I know you do so many great things in the community and in the world at large. So just to be a part of this is really great.
Awesome. Cool. Well, a little bit about Paige. Let me tell you about her. So she is a marketing and visibility strategist. She's the founder of the Chandelier Club, travel entrepreneur, international speaker, and sandwich generation influencer. She is the communication and marketing director for the Polka Dot Powerhouse worldwide and has her very own Amazon Live channel. You can find her eating macaroons in every flavor and online at Paris by Paige. So Paige, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's great. I'm excited about the topics and the women that you are interviewing. So I knew I had to be a part of it.
Awesome. I would love to just dive right in. I want to jump right in and just find out, especially all of those different things that you do. Like, tell me about your story, like wherever you want to kind of start and dive in and share, like, how did you get to this point and have all these amazing things that you do?
Yeah, so my story goes back. So first of all, I've always been in marketing and branding right out of college, and I've always been in travel. So I have a 30 plus year career with marketing and with a travel company or travel in some way. So those are really the two core tenets of who I am. So you'll always find me doing something around that. So right out of college, I was able to secure a position where I did marketing to China and Southeast Asia for 12 years, as well as the whole French thing. People are just like, what's up with this French stuff? Well, I started speaking French when I was 5. I continued on in grade school, middle school, high school, studied at the Sorbonne in Paris, lived in France for 3 years. And I'm a true Francophile, love all things French. And I go there every year and I lead small group tours and sharing my passion for France. But I've always loved marketing and visibility and branding and showing people how to take those complex concepts and making them super simple and super easy to use that they can incorporate them into their lives or into their business. So that's just me in a nutshell. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a traveler, and I'm a dot sister. So there we go.
Yeah. And so where did the love of 5 years old speaking French, like where does that come from? That really
my mother.
Your mother. So was she
Yes.
born in
She was not. My mother is from the South, from Alabama, and she's Creole. So if you know anything about Creole, or so it's a mixture of Native American, African American, and French influences from the Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi realm of our country. And they spoke a patois, and they wanted me to speak French properly. So that's where it all started, was her. And I just had a knack for it and a gift for it, and continued on. And I am fluent in French, and I love it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So my husband and I own a Cajun and Creole restaurant. So
okay, yeah. So
Yep. Yeah. So and we have been to Louisiana, but that's neat. I was wondering, I was like, wait, where does that stem from?
Yeah, that's where it stems from. They wanted me to speak it the right way. Especially with all the patois and all of that. You have little pieces here and there, but it really isn't as formal as actual French. So that's where that all started.
Yeah. So you did like you were, help people with travel and travel agent, like take people to Paris every year and do those kinds of things. How did you really venture into like the entrepreneur, like outside of that as well? All of these other amazing pockets that you do in the marketing and all of these the chandelier, like how did you get into that? Like how did that start for you?
Yeah. So actually, I'm not a travel agent, but I know lots of people who are. I was just in the travel industry. So I had worked for major airlines and major travel companies, but in the marketing space. So I was
Gotcha.
always a marketing executive within the travel space. So that's where that connection came in. And so always marketing, always really wanting to know more about personal branding, always staying on top of the trends. My husband always teases me that I tend to lean younger when it comes to like social media and all of that kind of stuff. So I've always just had a passion for it and a passion for learning new things and not being afraid of that. And I think that that's what has taken me the furthest with my entrepreneurial endeavors per se, as far as really with the Chandelier Club. It was about, I had so much experience and opportunities that a lot of people in our age checkbox, just didn't have. And they were afraid. They were very, very much afraid to dive into social media, dive into the computer stuff, dive into, because we grew up in a different time. And then pretty much everything, if you want to know how to use your streaming or your DVD player, ask a 5-year-old, because they know how to do it like just like that. They don't even have to think about it, right? And we're the ones reading the directions. And so people would get really, really afraid to really go for it. And I was like, you know what, we're sitting on stuff. We're missing out on really good opportunities because we're afraid of the technology. We're afraid, we don't know what the 3 dots mean on Facebook. We don't know what this means on Pinterest or how to upload our video to YouTube. And I knew that I would be able to help people do that in a space that was welcoming, non-judgmental, and building a community as well. And that's what the Chandelier Club, that's how that whole thing evolved, was because I knew that people needed that safe space where they could ask the question 3-10 times if they needed to, about how do I post this on Instagram, or how do I make a reel, or how do I do these things. And that's where I created that community. So I just love it. People are really taking to it, and they're finding out that it's not as hard as they think that it is.
Right.
It's just that there's just a lot of information in a short amount of time. And how do you, curate what information is right for you and what isn't, or what you can just pass over. And that's what I help people with.
Yeah. Well, and so you have just listed a ton of things that you do, and you're also a wife and you're a mom. How
Yes.
in the world do you manage your time then? Like, I think our listeners would really be, I think that is one of the things that as a mom, I have the hardest time doing, is managing my time with all the things that I have said yes to, that fill my cup, that I want to say yes to. But then also being that mom, a lot of the time moms have mom guilt, right?
Right.
How do you manage that? How do you manage your time? Do you have something that works for you that, that you
Yes.
all these things together? I would love for you to share.
Yeah. So first of all, I am not afraid to say no. It is a full-on sentence. There's that. And second of all, I time block, and I'm a huge planner. I have a planner, I'm a time blocker, all the things. So it's like, if it does not fall within that realm, then it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not part of my top core 3 for the goals that I've set for the quarter, then it does not happen. I don't care how important it is to anyone else. If it doesn't fall within, those mom duties or those wife duties or even my business, then it doesn't fall. It just doesn't get my time. And I make no qualms about that.
Yeah. Were you always able to say no, or did you have to grow into that?
I think that I was always able to say no. But I think as time has gone on, I've gotten much, much better I would say no, but then I would give an explanation. Like, no, because, that kind of thing. But now I'm just like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
How old is your son?
My son is 12. He'll be 13.
Yeah. So I would love to ask, because I have a 12. So I have a 12, I have a 15, I have a 29-year-old bonus son. So busy mama, boy mom. So there's that, where it's like you just were sharing with me earlier, your son just shared today. There's basketball tryouts tonight.
At 3:30, my husband just told me.
At 3:30. So this is really the life of the mom, is being able to adapt, right, to those things that are thrown at us at all times. It's being able to adapt. But what was life a lot different for you before you had your son 12 years ago? Was
Oh, mother. Yeah, absolutely. Life, I felt like I didn't realize how good I had it. And being able to have the flexibility to do the things that I wanted to do without having to coordinate schedules, without having to, all the things, right? But I do feel that it's definitely, because, I'm an older mom. I had my boy when I was 39.
Okay.
So it was a lot different. I had done and experienced a lot of really, really cool stuff before I had my child. So I didn't have to worry about, oh, I'm never going to get a chance to do this. I mean, I've traveled to 20 different countries in the world, right? So you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, yeah, no one feels sorry for me kind of thing. However, I find that now with my little guy, well, now big guy, because he thinks he's going to be as tall as me by Christmas.
I want to see if he is. I want to see if
yeah. Well, we've bet $10 that he's going to be as tall as me. But now I find that I'm even more, there's a lot more discernment with how I spend my time.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was just like my time was my own, and now it's not so much. It's more about creating those meaningful experiences for him and for my husband, you know what I mean? Us as a family and that kind of stuff. So I find that I'm even more planful with my time and with the activities that we do. Yeah. I love connecting with women. That's one of the tenets of Polka Dot Powerhouse is connecting, changing the world by connecting the dots. And, we have what's called connections where we interact with each other on a regular basis with women all over the world and all over the United States. However, for me, I set boundaries around that, right? So I do 4 30-minute connects on Fridays. And if you can't fit into those, people are just like, oh my God, I can't see anything until December.
Yep.
Yeah.
December.
So it's about setting your boundaries and setting what your priorities are. And I found that has been really, really helpful to me. And even my friends are just like, oh, well, if you found something in December, you better grab it because next thing you know, it's going to be March if you try to go back in there. Right. So it's about training people and really admiring people's boundaries. Like I have another dot sister who's really close to me. Weekends are her family time. They're her family time. So don't say, hey, do you want to go to brunch on Sunday? It's not going to happen because that's the time that she spends with her daughter and her husband, So it's like, it's about establishing those boundaries and being okay with that, even though it may hurt people's feelings. Initially, it's about doing what's best for you and your priorities.
Yeah, I know when I first became MD and even joined like the dot world and just life in general, like I did not have those boundaries set into place. So I would totally burn myself out by all the connects and talk to everyone because I love, like, I'm like you, I love connecting. Like I thrive off of it. And I love women and I love supporting women. And I'm really curious about life and like, who are you? What makes you excited? What's your passion? Like, I just love women. I love people, but women especially. And so for me, that really happened where I was like, wow, I was connecting just like, yes, 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 all the time. And I really started to feel the burnout. And so I've had to set different boundaries. For me, I do it, quarterly. I look at, okay, what capacity do I have right now? What do I have going on in my life? Working on this podcast, all the different things. So do you change your boundaries? Like, do they kind of shift depending on if you have like more business stuff, more personal stuff, more travel? Like, do you kind of look at those periodically?
Yeah. So I love that you set your boundaries and your priorities quarterly because I do as well. Quarterly is very important to me. I feel like lots of things can happen in those couple of months. So I love doing that because it's all based on what's happening at the time, right? And what the goal is. So always review, like, we're in this last quarter of the year. We're already getting geared up for 2022, like in my own world and in the dot world. So it's like, we're already, looking ahead. So I just love that. And I love being able to grabbing, a sheet of paper and writing it all down and saying what's important, what's not important, what can be pushed off. I think it's important to have that kind of clarity in order for your life to work smoother.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you too, because you were saying that you know, had your son as you were a little older, still fabulous. So age is just a number.
Yeah.
But was
Yep.
there anything that really, you know, struck you when you had him at 39 that like surprised you? That was like a lot harder than you thought, that you really had to work through, like being 39, that I'm sure a lot of people gave you a ton of advice and this is what you thought it was going to be like. Was there anything that really surprised you that you were like, huh, this was a lot different than I thought it was going to be?
Well, first of all, I really wasn't taking people's advice.
I'm not surprised.
I wasn't taking people's advice. So I think the thing that really struck me the most once I had my child was that as an older mom, I had a lot of wisdom that a lot of younger moms don't necessarily have at that point. However, I did not have the energy. Mm-hmm. Oh, I was tired all the time. You know what I mean? It was just like fatigue. Now, you know, I'm finally coming into my stride with it, but
12 years later,
12 years later, girl,
mom brain is finally gone.
Finally gone. But yeah, so I felt like I had a lot more wisdom. Like I would see younger moms get all upset over like little stuff. And I'm like, oh girl, those, you know, don't sweat the small stuff. That's like not even, you know, because I was that mom, you know, I made all his food, you know, did the ice cube things, all the, you know, swaddles and this and that. And then of course, you know, my mom and my grandma and you know, they were a totally different generation and they're just like, well, you know, you're supposed to sleep when the baby sleeps, you know, all the things. That's why I was just like, you know what, I'm not taking any advice from anyone anymore.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of figure this out.
I was gonna say, where did this stem from? Like your family of just being like badass, you know what I mean? Like, did you come up growing up with like people that were entrepreneurs and just did things their way? And that was like, where does that come from? Because that's not, I don't want to say that's not normal, but I would say the average like mom, you know, when I grew up, so, you know, I'm going to be 44. When I was growing up, it was like, you get a job, you go to college, you work for 40 years, you work this many hours, and then you retire. Like, how did you it seems like maybe, did you grow up differently or were you hearing things growing up that just gave you a different vibe to just kind of go out and do your own thing too?
You know, it definitely came from my parents for sure. You know, I've always been the one to do the things that nobody else did, you know, and my parents were always, you know, pushing me to do those things. You know, like traveling by myself and, you know, going to China by myself.
Before cell phones.
Like when you had to like write like on a piece of paper, airmail. Remember those little
you had to
thin
have
pieces
of
paper?
Like a book.
Yeah. So, and this was, and a book map. Yeah. And thank goodness I did all of that stuff pre-Facebook because, oh girl. Yeah. There's no photographic or video evidence to all of my foolishness and mayhem. No. But yeah, I think it's been really instilled in me to just be your own person. I have a really, really strong self-confidence and confidence in my abilities, which is one of the things that I'm totally trying to pass on to my son, especially in this crazy world. I mean, I would not want to be a child right now. There's just so many different influences and pressures and all the things. But just really knowing that you can be your own person. And I think that was instilled in me very, very early on. And I just took it and ran with it.
Yeah. Did you, what kinds of things do you do because I'm curious, because I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, and, you know, we work a lot on mindset, or you try to, because, you know, I used to be a school teacher. And
right.
So it's totally different teaching students versus trying to teach, educate, enlighten your children. So things that I say, a lot of the time, just they want to ignore me and they don't know what I'm talking about. How do you instill those things in your son? And does he listen? Do you find that like he's taking it in, or you hear him doing things like, a month or two later and you're like, you were listening. Ah.
Yeah, we have a lot of those moments. We have a lot of those moments where we're just like, oh, okay, you did hear me, you know? And then, you know, dad comes from, my husband's family owned a newspaper. So they are like total prose people. So when he tells a story, like I like Instagram and Twitter because it's short, concise, and my husband likes Facebook because they write these dissertations, you know, these stories. So my husband's always giving him like these long, you know, these long, like we call them life lessons. Like Robert will look at me and we'll go, oh, here goes the life lesson from dad, you know, kind of thing. And I'm just like, you know, to the point. But, you know, I will say that I get to be, dad's the fun one. And I'm the hard ass when it comes to the family. But it's okay. And I tell him, my job is to be your mom.
Yeah.
That's my job. You may not like me sometimes. It's okay. But my job, and I, you know, and one of the other things I think that we have conversations with our son about a lot is that I always tell him, we don't have the extra 10 or 15 years that other parents have. So the time that we have with you, we're trying to make sure that you get all the lessons, life lessons, advice, information that we've learned, because we may not have those extra 10 years to give those to you.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that he pretty well takes that seriously when I say that to him, because he knows that we're older and everything. So.
Yeah. So your husband, is he your age as well?
My husband is actually 5 years older than me.
Okay. Okay.
So we were both much older when well, not much older, but we're both older when we had our child. And my pregnancy was perfect. I mean, it was after, they were like, you have the body, because, you know, I did all the testing and because I was over 35 and they try to scare you to bits and all the whatevers. And the lady says, you know, you have the body of an 18-year-old when we did the genetic testing and stuff. And I'm like, well, girl, my knees don't feel like I have the body of an 18-year-old. But so my pregnancy was perfect and everything. So, you know, physically, it wasn't that, you know, it wasn't an issue at all. It was, I think it was just more, you know, more time in the, you know, in the kettle that I had than other people, than other moms.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
I mean, like, here's an example. So you see the TV, you know, you see the shows on TV when someone's having a baby and they're screaming and they're cursing and all the things and they're in pain and all this kind of stuff. So they induced me. I was having some complications. They induced me. And then labor came on its own. So I was having like double labor.
Wow.
Not a fun time.
Yeah.
And so the very next day, you know, after we do all the things or whatever, and I have the kid, the next day I say to the nurse, I said, I am so sorry if I was rude to you yesterday. Or she says, oh my gosh, you were not rude. She's like, you didn't even scream at me. What you said to me was, if I can't figure out what to do or have the skill set to do it, to find someone who could. And I'm like, that sounds just like me. Look at you, you're laughing because you know.
I love it. I'm like, yes, okay, yes, that's you.
That is Paige. She said, you said it very calmly.
Yeah.
You did not yell at me, but you told me if I couldn't do it, I needed to find someone with the skill set who could.
There you go. Like, and I guess she made it happen for you.
She did make it happen. So that's what I mean by totally different. You know what I mean? It's a totally different scene.
Yeah, it is. I had delivered 2 babies. So the first delivery was so different than the second for me, because the first one, I had this conception, like, you know what a good mom does. And she goes in and she has a natural labor, and that's what a good mom does. And she doesn't take anything. And so I was in labor for so many hours. I was sitting on the ball. My husband had we were in the shower. He had like the hot, you know, water running on my back, like all the things. And I was like, why am I torturing myself? Like, it does not make me any less if I have an epidural and my child comes out and they are perfectly fine.
That's right.
I sit here and my body was suffering and I was in such pain. And I was like, this isn't fun for me. This doesn't feel good. And so when I finally gave in and said, you know what, like, it's really okay if I have an epidural. Like, I have tried enough and I've done enough. And so I would like to have an epidural. And as soon as I did, I was able to relax. And then like two
Yeah.
hours later, I had my beautiful child in my hands.
Yeah.
And I think it's that misconception that so many moms go through and continue to go through of like, what is a good mom or what is a bad mom? And these are the things I should be doing. And these are the things that I shouldn't be doing.
Oh yeah.
And
And it comes all, I mean, and it's coming from all different directions, especially like when I was in labor, I was like, okay, this is why. And I said to the nurse, I'm like, this is why women go and have babies in rice paddies, because this is ridiculous. I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy town. And and of course, me, I had the room with the music in the tub and the shower,
yeah,
all the things. All the things that, yeah, no. I was like, and it ended up his nose was sunny side up on my pelvis. So we ended up having to do a C-section after like 12 hours of labor.
yeah,
And so it was just like, you know what? It is what it is. We're all healthy. We're all,
yeah,
but there's so much pressure. And I think that pressure comes, from so many different places. And so for me, I didn't have the pressure as far as like you did with the actual birth portion of it, but I did have pressure when it came to breastfeeding.
Okay.
Because I wasn't producing enough milk. And so I felt like a complete failure that I wasn't able to feed my child and all that kind of stuff. And I ended up, we had a lactation specialist come in and all the things. And then I had to like supplement. And I was like, oh, I can't even feed my baby, all that kind of stuff. So it was just, it comes to you in different forms. And then I remember when we brought the baby home, we were giving him some formula, and neither my husband or I knew anything about bibs for the bottles, right? And so my husband went and got another, like a smaller bib, and we put a little hole, and my husband's like, this is worse than the Marine Corps. It's like sleep deprivation and I'm killing my child and I can't, it was just like, no one even prepares you for it, they just give you this beautiful life and then they send you off like doodles. And you're like, what? It's crazy.
I know it is. And it continues. Do you find now, okay, here, 12 years later, do you find that there's still things that you go through that are like, oh, should I be doing this or should I be doing this, or the mom guilt, or bad mom, good mom, or this is what people are doing with my 12-year-old and this is the phone, they're giving them the phone all day long and they have all access? Or do you find that you still have those thoughts like going through your head, or are you being like, nope, I'm good?
I'm over it. I'm over it. I felt that early on when when the iPads came out, he was probably like 3-ish. And then I would see people in the grocery store and they give their child an iPad while they're in the grocery store. And I'm like, can't they just talk to their babies? Why do they have to give their babies the iPad? Right. I found that I was starting to be really judgmental about other people and how they were, occupying their children's time. But by the time my kid got to be like 6, I was like, Wildcats, where are you? Because I need to take a shower, kind of thing. So I found that once I really got into motherhood, that the judgment thing went out the window. I was like, people are doing the best that they can with what they have. You have no idea what's going on,
right,
in other people's lives. So
yeah. And I think it's just so important for, us as moms to really just to know that we're not alone, because everyone is going through it. You know what I mean? And so many times, especially with the pandemic and we were stuck at home and you couldn't get out, or maybe your kids were playing sports and you weren't able to socialize and we couldn't go to meetings and doing all the things that you typically do, or that might typically light you up. Like some people, they might've been like, oh, this is great, I get to stay home. I don't do anything. Like me, I was like, this is suffering for me.
Yes.
But I don't know where I was going with that, but I think I was going with like just being able to, get rid of that judgment. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's just crazy. Just like last year was just, it played a role so much on mental health and just how we as moms, like my kids were on electronics, like so much more. And so I went through that battle of like, but I feel bad. And then they're not in school and then they're not playing sports. And it's like, I gotta work at the same time. So trying to keep them busy, it was definitely a struggle the last 18 months to try and be like, what's kind of like, what are we going to do right now to kind of function as a family?
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge struggle for me, especially because his district was virtual. So, some of his friends were actually in school, like half days or whatever, half the week, but his was virtual. So not only was he on devices for school, but he was also for his own leisure time. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, can I just like unhook the internet and see what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
But then I also had to work, right? We were all here. The one thing that was the saving grace for us was, we have Blueberry, who's a parakeet. We actually got Blueberry 3 days before the lockdown.
Well, that's a gift.
Sure. So it was interesting. We learned all sorts of bird facts and everything during that time, but it was just nice to have other things to do that weren't on the electronics. And I'm on the electronics all the time. So it was just really trying to find that balance for both professional and personal, and then being an example to him.
Yeah. I was had a struggle too.
Yeah. So we did No Tech Tuesdays, where no tech, no TV, no, only on Tuesdays in our house during the pandemic. Yeah. And that worked well. We did puzzles and, stuff that we just, stuff that you and I did as kids.
Yeah.
They were gifts.
Yeah. Like, what is this thing? This is a puzzle. You put it together. Like, you don't like do it on your iPad and like color it in with a color, like all the fives.
Right. No. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Is there anything else to share just for moms, like just to give hope, or like, you're so strong? Is there any advice or anything that you haven't shared that you think just would be great for moms to hear and listen to?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has been really important and pivotal just for my own sake is to believe more in yourself. I have a really hard time with the gurus. I think that everyone is their own guru, and that people should really start listening more to their gut and listening more to their own intuition and what their body is physically saying to them, and just really lean more into who they are and not worrying about other people. Mm-hmm. And what other people, the messages that other people may place on you, because it's already inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I was on a abundance summit yesterday, and it was a lot about that, and just listening to your intuition. And Allison, I think Byard is how you say her last name, but it was beautiful because she just like took this pause, like when the question was asked, and just was like thinking about what she wanted to say. And I think so often we as women just think like the answer has to come just like this, or we have to go ask somebody, because in this age of the internet, we can have an answer so quickly. And sometimes like we have to get quiet to be able to actually hear the answer that is inside of us. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing, because even, talking to my kids when I want to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to freak out right now. Sometimes just taking that pause and taking a breath can even just help alleviate like my anxious like reaction that I'm going to give.
Right.
So I just think that's so beautiful, because it's we know the answer. We have to trust ourselves.
We do. And I think as moms, we need to trust ourselves more.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's so much information out there. How many books can you read? How many things can you listen to? How many things can you read? How many, going on Facebook and all the different things. And those things are great, but it's taking those things also with a grain of salt and saying like, yeah, but I know this is what's best for my family. It might not be best for Paige's family, but this is what's best for my family and my life. And it doesn't have to be the same as what my parents did and their parent. Like, this is me or my sister or my brother. This is my life, and this is what works best for our family unit.
And be okay with that. And if someone challenges you, you are strong enough to be like, hey, this is what's good for us, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think that's so important. It's very hard, because when you do something that is against the grain, I went and lived in the United Kingdom for 6 months, and then I've left my teaching job 2 times, like, and people are like, you're crazy. What are you doing? Like that like paycheck that's coming in every week, the consistency, it's like, what are you going to do? And it's like, I'll figure it out. Like, trust myself that there is something that will come, or it's already here, or I haven't gotten there yet, but it's trusting that there is so much abundance abundance that is out there, and it will come. And like, you might make a decision for your family and be like, oh yeah, that sucked.
Right.
Then you just keep going, because you just have to figure it out on your own.
You have to figure it out on your own. And you also know that, like, I always know I'm going to land on my feet.
Sorry.
You know, that's okay.
Telemarketer.
That's all right. I always know that I'm going to land on my feet no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're keeping bet on yourself, and you're going to figure it out. And you know that you work so hard, and no matter what, like, you've got this up here, you've got your brain, and your brain can think of different things at all times, and you can shift and you can adjust, and you can figure it out.
Absolutely, you can. So yeah, so that's it. Bet on yourself. There we go.
All right. This is the last question for you. That's for all the ladies out there. So here's how I want to leave it, because we as women, I know we do this at Dots. We celebrate, we don't celebrate ourselves enough. And so we force people to celebrate personally or professionally, like, about yourself. But I want to know, because we as women, we kind of talked about that a little bit, like, we're trusting ourselves, but also loving ourselves. So what I want to know is, right now, what do you love about yourself? Like, what do you love about Paige Engle that you just give yourself a big hug and love about yourself?
I love the way that I make other people feel. I love the way that I can have a conversation with someone or an interaction with someone, and they walk away and they're just like, oh my gosh, Paige, I love you. You made me feel X, Y, and Z. That's what I love, that I have that superpower.
Yeah. And I can totally say yes, that you do, for sure, because whenever we have gotten to meet in person or even through Zoom or any kind of call, you're just a very giving person. Your personality, like, you love to share. You're like, here, come join me. Here, let me show you. And that is a gift that for sure not everyone has.
Thank you for that. No, and that's what I love about myself. And people are just like, you're always giving and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? That's what jazzes me up, man.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I have loved this conversation. I can't wait to re-listen to it over and over again. Thank you so much for joining me today. And where can people find you?
Oh, well, people can find me online. You can go anywhere. Paris by Paige, and that's Paige. You can either put a hashtag in Google, hashtag Paris by Paige, or just type in Paris by Paige. You'll find me everywhere.
Awesome. Great. Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me today in this conversation. And I know that it is going to help so many women and so many mamas. So thanks, Paige.
Oh, thank you so much, Melissa, for having this forum.
Awesome. Thanks.